Artemi Panarin looks primed for a postseason breakout. What will he do for an encore after a strong game one? And will we see Matt Rempe fight Tom Wilson? All this and much, much more on today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers.
You're Locked On the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 1052 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. And today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off of your first purchase. And we are, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So obviously Ranger fans still feeling good, still probably riding high after that game one victory, although I'm sure there's a lot of fans like myself just that much more looking forward to game two now, and hopefully the Rangers can, take a good strong hold on this series, get the 2-0 lead, obviously hold serve at home. And again, I don't want to go too overboard with the way the Rangers played in game one, because it is just one game. But as I mentioned yesterday's episode, we touched on this a little bit. There were a lot of very, very positive signs, a lot of very encouraging signs, reasons that make you think that, this Ranger team is legit. I mean, I've felt that way all season. It's not just one playoff game that's going to suddenly, make me feel that way. And I'm sure a lot of you guys are in the same boat. But again, a lot of very encouraging signs and performances in game one from this Ranger team. And I think none any bigger than the way Artemi Panarin looked. I did a somewhat similar episode last year in the first round of the playoffs. I think it was after game two. Panarin at that point only had 2 assists, but looked a little bit better than he did maybe in other stretches of the playoffs, and just looked like somebody that was going to have a good playoff run. Obviously, it didn't work out. And at the risk of, doing the same thing all over again, I just don't see it this year. I think that this is the year that Artemi Panarin really finally puts all the pieces together in the postseason. And that's not to say that Panarin has never done well in the playoffs before. He did with the Blackhawks. He had 1 or 2 decent showings with the Blue Jackets as well. Even 2 years ago, people kind of got on Panarin the year that the Rangers went to the conference final. And, there were times he was a little hesitant, certainly sloppy with the puck at times. But even during that run, he played 20 games. He had 6 goals and 10 assists. It's not like he completely disappeared, shrank in the spotlight or anything along those lines. He was out there and he was, helping make it happen for the Rangers, despite maybe a couple of hiccups along the way. And for his career, Artemi Panarin coming into this year's postseason, 57 playoff games, 46 points. Now, that is less, points per game in the playoffs than it is during his career in the regular season, but that's usually to be expected. Most guys, they're not going to be able to produce quite that same level in the playoffs as they do in the regular season, because that's just the way the game is played. But again, this year for Panarin, for me at least, just feels different. It's felt different the entire season. I think Laviolette has been very good for him. We've seen Panarin play good defense all season for the Rangers. We saw it in this game as well. And he's had, not just in game one, but again, throughout the entire season, he's just kind of had that play every shift like it's your last type of mentality, the kind of mentality that you need to have to succeed at this time of the season. So that's been very encouraging as well. We saw him in game one get in on the forecheck at least a couple of times, fighting for the puck in the corner. He was willing himself to the high danger scoring areas, whereas, last year in the playoffs, I wouldn't say that he necessarily played soft, but I think he was kind of looking for those finesse plays, and it felt like he was always kind of along the boards. He never really got, or at least didn't very often get into position where it felt like he was in a high danger scoring area with a good chance to light the lamp. And in this game, it was quite the opposite, because Panarin did just that. He honestly could have had as many as, I would say, probably 3 goals in this game. He ended up with 7 shots on net, made some pretty good saves, did Charlie Lindgren against Panarin at different points in this game. A couple of glove saves where he denied Panarin. And, I tweeted this out during the game. I really felt like a goal was on the way for Panarin, just the way he was playing, the way he was skating, just the look and feel that line had when it was on the ice. It just felt like eventually they were going to get one. And sure enough, Panarin, not too long after that, was able to score. And I think, again, just the willingness and the eagerness that Artemi Panarin has shown to shoot the puck, certainly in the regular season. But you look at this game, and he ends up with a game high, Rangers and Capitals put together. Nobody had more shots on goal than Artemi Panarin. He had 7. So, again, just firing the puck at the net. And even on the goal that he scored, Vincent Trocheck, he could have passed to Trocheck. It looked like that pass might be there. I was almost expecting the pass. Maybe Lindgren was as well. We mentioned that in yesterday's episode. But instead, he takes the shot, just beats him clean under the glove. A great shot there by Panarin. And something I mentioned not too long ago, Henrik Lundqvist was talking about Panarin. He said, that guy has the most accurate shot I've ever seen. And it's nice that he's finally using that to his advantage. I mean, he's done it at times in the past, obviously, but never to the extent that we've seen this season. So that's great to see as well. And really, I mean, I touched on this very briefly just a minute ago, but really the entire Artemi Panarin played very well in this game. They've set the bar so high for themselves that you see them only end up with 1 goal, and it's kind of like, come on, guys, what's going on out there, right? But I still felt like they were buzzing for most of the game. They were at least creating some scoring opportunities. Lafreniere was out there hitting anything that moved. We talked about that in yesterday's episode too. I believe he ended up with a game-high 5 hits, tied with Jacob Trouba there. And you got to figure this line's going to continue to produce. They have what it takes, and it starts with Artemi Panarin. And like I said, it is just 1 game, but very, very encouraged by, what I saw from the Breadman in that Game 1 win. And I know that I'm not the only Ranger fan that feels that way. So we're going to keep everything rolling in just a second. Some other really encouraging signs that I saw in Game 1 against the Capitals, not the least of which is the Rangers' ability to play a very, very physical game. They out-hit the Caps and just kind of felt like they wanted this one more. Were able to assert their will at different points in this game. So we're going to talk about that, whole bunch of other stuff as well. But first, we definitely would like to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and even easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. Save up to 60%. Buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. Save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or the event. Save even more when you choose a section and let Game Time choose the seats. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. The Locked On NFL Mock Draft is available now. Find the ultimate 6-episode series on Locked On NFL Draft to hear who the local Locked On experts are picking for every NFL franchise, with live reactions from local college football experts and even the fantasy football angle. The Locked On NFL Mock Draft, available now on Locked On NFL Draft or YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. All right, let's go ahead and keep everything rolling here. So the Rangers really knocked the Capitals around in this game, and don't take my word for it. The final hit total was 31-20 in favor of the Rangers. And to begin with, I've been selling really all season on this idea that the Rangers are not a physical team. There's certain Ranger fans that it feels like it's always doom and gloom, no matter how this team is playing, no matter how they're winning games. There's always, a reason to find fault with this or with that. It's one thing to critique, and that's what we all do as fans, but there's certain Ranger fans, and you guys know, I'm preaching to the choir here, but there's certain Ranger fans that they would have you believe this is like a bottom 5 team in the NHL, and one of their go-to reasons for that always seems to be this supposed lack of physicality, that, by the way, does not exist. Once again, Game 1 here, Capitals, I mean, look, this is a team that is known for playing physical and playing kind of nasty and probably wanting to turn this series into a slog. We're going to elaborate on that a little bit later. But the Rangers, not only did they outskill them, I mean, they out-physicaled them as well. They out-hit them by a good margin. Once again, Lafreniere and Trouba each leading the way with 5 hits. 3 hits apiece for Miller, Rempe, and Roslovic. And one thing I love, the first shift of this game, the Mika Zibanejad line started this game. puck gets dumped deep into the Capital zone, Roslovic and Mika Zibanejad of all people. Now, they'll hit every once in a while. I mean, every player in the NHL is going to deliver a hit once in a while. But to see both of them, knock their guy into the boards on the first shift of the game, the first time the Rangers got the puck deep, that was awesome. Just good to see. Mika Zibanejad, by the way, later in this game, he bodied Tom Wilson. The puck was in the Rangers zone, and it was kind of along the boards there. And Mika went over, not like a crazy bone-jarring hit or anything like that, but he bodied Tom Wilson. He put his body on him, didn't back down from him for a second there. And again, this myth that they're not physical. So I checked, some of you guys might remember, and I'm going to take this a step further in just a second. You'll see what I mean. But I checked hits at the end of the season, as far as team stats, twice right near the end of the regular season. One time I checked, they were 7th in the league in hits per game. The second time I checked, they were 9th in points per game. 7th and 9th. So not bad at all. In the top third as far as, hits. And I know that hits aren't like the only example of physicality, but I think it's a good measuring stick for sure. The Rangers are a physical team. And just because they're skilled, it doesn't mean that they're not physical as well. They're both of those things. And call me crazy, I get the feeling that the mix of having skill and having toughness and having an edge, that probably has something to do with the fact that the Rangers have the best record in the NHL. I mean, is that some kind of like crazy factoid that I just came up with there? I get the feeling that, the fact that this team is able to do both of those things and win games in a variety of ways, I mean, that to me is a good thing. Let's not make it into a bad thing, because clearly this team can win with skill, can win with physicality. One other thing that I'll say about game 1, too, when you look at the box score and you look at the hits from the Rangers, there were only 4 skaters on the Rangers who did not have a hit in this game. It was Adam Fox, Ryan Lindgren, Alex Wenberg, and Vincent Trocheck. Every other player in the Ranger lineup had at least one hit. And I said a second ago, I was going to take this whole thing a step further, right? We went through the hits. I was curious to see as far as fighting is concerned, because not that you can like punch your way to the Stanley Cup. I mean, that can't happen, but obviously you do have to be able to defend yourself. If there's the kind of game that just the temperature rises and things get really nasty and really dangerous out there. So think about the Ranger roster and think about how many different players there are that not only play physical, but also, in the case of this list I'm about to read here, can fight and will fight if the occasion calls for it. This is the list I came up with. Obviously, Rempe. We know Matt Rempe is willing to fight. Even the Rempe naysayers, I think you have to at least give him that. Barclay Goodrow will fight. Will Cooley will fight. Jacob Trouba will fight. Chris Kreider, every once in a while. I don't know. Did Kreider get in any fights this year? It's hard to remember, but he's certainly done it in the past. Alexis Lafreniere, we've seen him fight a couple of times. Jimmy Vesey. Vesey, that brawl that they had with the Devils, he couldn't wait to drop the gloves and start throwing fists. And that kind of resulted in, because that fight started first, so everybody else was like, an additional fight after a fight had already started, and 8 players get ejected. That was a whole thing. But obviously, Vesey will fight if he has to. Possibly K-Andre Miller. I mean, that was his first fight, that big brawl against the Devils, but he won it. I don't think Miller's going to back down from anybody. Certainly, I think Lindgren, Schneider, those guys can fight. Do you think that's enough? I just named 10 players on this team that are willing to drop the gloves, willing to fight. That's 10 out of 18 players, because we're not going to count the goalies, obviously. So 10 out of your 18 skaters in one situation or another will drop the gloves if they have to. I think that's enough. I don't think this is a team that's going to be intimidated or pushed around when they've got 10 different skaters who will drop the gloves if the occasion calls for it. One more stat here I'll throw out as far as, physicality and the fighting. So the Rangers this year, 23 fights. And I know, yes, 5 of them were right at the start of that game against the Devils, but you know what? They all count. 23 fights for the Rangers in the regular season this year. Guess how many teams in the NHL had more fights than the Rangers? It was only 10. And here's the list of the teams that had more fights than the Rangers. You've got the Senators, the Predators, the Canadiens, the Wild, the Blackhawks, the Coyotes, the Ducks, the Jets, the Leafs, and the Lightning. So you look at that list, only 2 of those 10 teams I just mentioned are in the Eastern Conference playoffs right now, the Leafs and the Lightning. A lot of these teams missed the playoffs completely. Like, call me crazy. I don't think we have to worry about the Senators or the Canadiens or the Blackhawks right now. And some of these teams that have more fights than the Rangers, they're in the Western Conference. So if the Rangers see these teams, they're going to be playing them in the Stanley Cup final. Good problem to have at that point. So again, the lack of physicality, we're putting that thing to bed right away. I mean, the Rangers did it themselves, that they put that to bed going up against a Capitals team that, again, I think wants to make this series probably as nasty as possible. I think that's going to be kind of their strategy going forward. We'll see what happens there. But, I mean, the Rangers out-hit the Capitals and pushed them around, and that's kind of the Capitals' game. And the Rangers took it and threw it right back in their face and actually had the edge in that area. And forget about the physicality for a second, because we're talking also here about, like, assertiveness, right? How about, like, the mental side, the way the Rangers asserted themselves in this game? And again, it is just one game. We'll see what happens going forward here. The Rangers at times in this game had the Capitals flustered a little bit. Tom Wilson lost his cool at the end of this game. I mean, he was trying to fight everybody not named Matt Rempe, because that's just kind of how he rolls. But obviously, the Rangers did a good job. They handled themselves well in that situation. It really is funny how Tom Wilson always tends to fade to the background when, like, Ryan Reeves is around, or now when Matt Rempe is around. We'll see if they cross paths. I mean, it's possible the two of them drop gloves. Frankly, I don't think Wilson has the guts to do it, but we'll see. Tom Wilson would rather fight Artemi Panarin or, like, Jack Roslovic than drop the gloves with a Ryan Reeves or, in this case, a Matt Rempe. So we'll see. But again, Wilson very clearly frustrated at the end of this game. You also had a situation at the end of the second period where Van Riemsdyk, I don't know what his problem was, but he was basically trying to take on the entire Rangers team, to the point that the Capitals, a bunch of them had already gone to the tunnel. They had to come back onto the ice to come get their guy and get him off the ice. I mean, I don't know what was going on with Van Riemsdyk there. Maybe just trying to spark his team, ignite his team. I get that to an extent. But, I mean, to me, it looked like a team that was flustered, and hopefully that was the case. And look, game two, there's no guarantees, right? I mean, we really like what we saw, I think, for the most part in game one. Game two, I think, is going to be considerably nastier, played with more of an edge than game one. Not that that was completely lacking in game one, but I think it's just going to go to the next level in game two for a couple of reasons here. First of all, that's just usually how it goes in the playoffs, right? Because game one, again, a little bit of a feeling out process. Game two, the stakes are raised, and every game just takes on more significance going forward. And I just get the feeling you might see these teams, at least one fight in this game. We'll see how it goes. On top of that, you've got the very simple fact that the Rangers and the Capitals just do not like each other. And it's been that way for quite some time. And as I alluded to a couple of minutes ago, I'm going to elaborate on it now. The Capitals, I really think their best chance in this series is probably to turn this into as much of a grind, as much of a slog, and make it just as nasty and ugly as possible. Because when it comes to, like, offensive fireworks, I just feel like the Rangers have them beat in that department, and have them beat by a pretty considerable margin. One thing I also have to mention here is, and to kind of illustrate my point, is the manner in which the Caps were winning games at the end of the regular season. They were all very low scoring, and obviously the Caps did what they had to do. They won their last 3 games just to get into the playoffs. But listen to these scores of the Capitals games down the stretch here. We're going to go from most recent in the regular season to least recent to kind of illustrate my point and just show you that this team really struggles to score goals. So again, most recent to least recent, you've got a 2-1 win, a 2-0 win, a 4-2 loss, another 4-2 win there, and then another 4-2 loss, and then a 2-1 win, a 3-2 overtime loss, a 4-2 loss, a 4-1 loss, a 6-2 loss. We gotta go back to March. Hang on just for a second here. A 3-2 shootout loss and a 5-1 loss. So again, the very common theme here is that this team just isn't scoring a lot of goals. And like I said, I think their best chance is to make this low event hockey and make it ugly and nasty as they possibly can. The good news there, even if the Capitals do that, the Rangers have shown an ability to win those kinds of games, because the Rangers, one thing you got to love about this team all season is the variety of different ways that they've won games. They can win a slog. They can win a game that's a little bit of a stalemate and not a whole lot happening, where they have to kind of wait out their opponent. They can win a track meet. We've seen them do that a couple of times. That outdoor game against the Islanders certainly springs to mind. They can win a goalie duel. Igor Shesterkin can go toe-to-toe with any goalie in this league. So just a lot of different ways this Ranger team is capable of winning. And even if this does get ugly, even if this does get nasty, even if the Capitals do everything possible, again, to pull the Rangers kind of down into the mud with them, I think the Rangers can win that kind of a game too. We know they can come from behind a win. They led the NHL in comeback wins this season. So we'll see what happens. As far as Rempe versus Wilson, again, I don't know. I mean, it kind of depends on Wilson's willingness to do it. And I think also game flow is going to have something to do with it, because we saw McElrath trying to get at Rempe late in the game one. And Rempe just kind of was laughing at him and just kind of messing with him, I think. And, in that situation in the game, the Rangers had total control. There wasn't really a need for Rempe to drop the gloves. Now, if somebody challenges him, like if McElrath wants to step to him early in the game, I think Rempe will do it. We'll see. Maybe there's part of him that thinks like, you know what? I'm not going to let them get any kind of a spark. This is the only way they can beat us is turn this game into something nasty. So maybe he exercises caution there. Rempe, we'll see. I do get that feeling, though. If Rempe gets into a fight, you're going to see McElrath do it instead of Tom Wilson, because Tom Wilson wants no part of that. Tom Wilson wants to pick on the Artemi Panarins of the world, and, it is what it is at this point. There's not really a whole lot else to say about that. I got to keep everything rolling in just a second here. A couple rapid-fire encouraging signs from Game 1 to close out today's episode. We're going to talk a little bit about the depth. We're going to talk about the Rangers' prowess at even strength. That was very nice to see as well. We will get to that in just a second. But first, we definitely would like to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by FanDuel. It's playoff time in the NBA and in the NHL. Baseball is currently in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. Bet on literally everything, from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all in an app that is safe, secure, and super, super easy to use. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is also brought to you by Policygenius. Policygenius is the country's leading online insurance marketplace. It saves you time and money so you can provide for your family with a financial safety net starting today. With Policygenius, you can find life insurance policies that start at just $292 per year for $1 million worth of coverage. Some options offer same-day approval and avoid unnecessary medical exams. Policygenius helps you compare your options from top companies, and their team of licensed experts is on hand to help talk you through it. Talk to a team of award-winning agents who will walk you through the process step by step. Easily compare quotes from America's top insurers in just a few clicks to find your lowest price. Check life insurance off your to-do list in no time with Policygenius. Head to policygenius.com/LockedOnNHL or click the link in the description to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you could save. That is policygenius.com/LockedOnNHL. All right, a couple more rapid-fire encouraging signs here, going forward for however long this playoff run lasts for the Rangers, and obviously we hope it goes for a long time. But I think for sure the depth in general, we gave the fourth line their flowers in yesterday's episode, but let me just say, I think from a mental perspective, mental standpoint, I guess we could say, for the fourth line, to me, that's absolutely huge what they did yesterday, because can you make a deep playoff run without getting a ton of offensive contributions from your fourth line? Yeah, I think that's certainly possible. The fourth liners are out there to play physical and establish a tone more so than anything else, and hopefully play good defense as well. But for these guys, Goodrow and VZ and Rempe, for them to get on the scoreboard twice, and for them to be trusted with more ice time than they usually get, for them to take some offensive zone draws, I thought that was awesome. They played a good game, and they were rewarded for it. And look, it's one thing to go out there and do the blue-collar work, and I'm sure all three of those players take a lot of pride in being those guys and doing those things for this team. But nobody wants to be like a total plug. Nobody wants to be somebody that is incapable of going out there and scoring. And I think the fact that this line got a couple of goals early, I think that bodes well for them. Hopefully that kind of takes the edge off. Matt Rempe, I think he's built for playoff hockey in the first place, but that's his first Stanley Cup playoff game. To get a goal, to score the first goal for your team of the Stanley Cup playoff run, that had to be a little bit of a weight off of his shoulders. That had to have helped him, take a little bit of a deep breath, help him relax a little bit. Again, he looks like he's ready to go to me, but he is 21 years old. You got to believe there's at least some nerves there. For him to get that goal, I think was huge. For Barclay Goodrow, he's had kind of a resurgence late in the season. He's not going to be a point-per-game player. We all know that. But he did start contributing a little bit more offensively. And just in general, I think playing some of the best hockey that he's played the entire season. He ends up with 2 assists in this game. Had the secondary on the first one. A great pass to VZ. Great job just getting to the puck in the first place. And then, winning the faceoff and that leading to a goal, as well as setting up VZ for the goal on the second one. So that is very encouraging what the fourth line did in this game. And I think just in general, the depth looked good. That the third line was very good in this game. Wenberg and Kako and Cooley, we'll see how they do going forward. But, I think the most encouraging thing might be that this just looked like a team that was ready to go. And there was at least some concern about, well, it's a long layoff. And I did my best to kind of alleviate those concerns, because the Rangers' best stretch of the season was basically the month of February. I mean, they won 11-1 in that month. They had a 10-game winning streak. And, that was right after a long layoff due to the All-Star break. So the layoffs don't seem to bother the Rangers. And again, this just looked like a team that was ready to go, ready for prime time, ready to play some playoff hockey. Something else we got to mention: how about the Rangers scoring all these goals at even strength? This one's pretty self-explanatory, but, there are some concerns, and I'm not going to act like they're completely unfounded, but there are some concerns among some Ranger fans that this team is a little bit too reliant on the power play. Power play merchants is a term that gets thrown around every now and then. Look, they have an awesome power play, and that is where they do a lot of their damage, but I do think this is a team that can hurt you 5v5. I think for sure there's offense to be had there. And again, it was just really nice to see these guys come through during even strength. And, obviously no power play goals for the Rangers. They were 0 for 2, but the Caps were 0 for 4. So that in and of itself was very nice. The Rangers doing a nice job as far as special teams are concerned, and showing they can still score a lot of goals even when the power play isn't firing on all cylinders, and or when they don't get a bunch of power play chances, because they only got 2 in this game. Didn't convert on either. Didn't matter. The Rangers still got the job done 5v5. Another big takeaway from this game for me, and again, it's something that I do find encouraging, is that if the Rangers get a lead, it kind of just feels like the Caps are in some trouble. Now, I'm never comfortable watching these games, and some of you made that clear to me on Twitter the other day that you're not either. And I joked, that I get more nervous when my team is winning in the playoffs than I do like if it's tied or even if they're trailing. There's just something about having a lead and trying to maintain it that can make you a little bit nervous. But the Capitals, they just don't seem to have the firepower offensively. I went through those scores a little bit earlier. They don't score a ton of goals. So if the Rangers get up by 2 goals, by 3 goals, it's going to be tough for the Capitals to come back. Not impossible. They're professional hockey players, and they're a playoff team, and they earn their spot just like everybody else. But that's not the Capitals game, man. They are trying to win low-scoring games, rely on low-event hockey, rely on their goalie. Obviously Charlie Lindgren was very good down the stretch. So if the Rangers do build leads, it's going to be tough for the Capitals to come back. I think it's tough to come back on the Rangers in the first place, but the Capitals just don't seem like a team that has the kind of firepower to do it. And again, we never know for sure how these things are going to go. Maybe somebody steps up for the Capitals, but it does seem to be, you always want to play with a lead, right? But it does seem to be a very good situation where the Rangers can, have a lead and take advantage of that and play the right kind of hockey, which leads me into my next big takeaway and big encouraging thing that I saw from this game. The Rangers played an awesome third period. I love the way they did this, and it goes back to something that I mentioned very early in the season, October, November. It was right when the Rangers were having that 5-0 road trip. A bunch of those games were in Canada, and they had some dramatic wins during that stretch. They went 5-0. But something I noticed then is that it feels like the Rangers, when they get a lead, they've kind of mastered this this craft, I guess you could say, of staying aggressive, continuing to look for more goals, continuing to look for more offense, but doing so while just playing smart. They never get caught, with an odd man rush going the other way. The Capitals came close to a breakaway with about 6 or 7 minutes to go in this game yesterday. That was like the lone exception to that rule, but the Rangers recovered in time to prevent that from happening. But for the most part, they seem to have kind of mastered this very delicate balance of staying aggressive when you have the lead, with also, again, being smart and being defensively responsible. And that's not an easy thing to do. It's difficult to know, how aggressive should we keep being? There were times in the past where, the Rangers would kind of shrink into a shell and rely on Igor to save them. Or if we want to go back even further, rely on Lundqvist to save them. That's no good. You don't want to play the entire third period in your own zone, back on your heels and everything. You want to stay aggressive. And there were a couple of times in this third period where the Rangers got very, very close to scoring, the backbreaking goal, making it 4-1. We talked in yesterday's episode. Kako hit the post, a couple other chances as well. Rangers came close right at the start of the third period to increasing the lead, weren't able to do it. And then eventually the dam finally broke and Chris Kreider scored on the breakaway. At that point, the Capitals were kind of forced to take some chances. Kreider got the breakaway, did the move that he always does, and was able to score. But again, I just love the way the Rangers have mastered, once again, a very, very delicate balance of staying aggressive, but also playing smart. And we saw that in game one here. And hopefully that's a theme going forward in the playoffs for this Ranger team. But figure we could pretty much call it there. If you guys would like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Once again, that is lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Definitely give us a follow on Twitter as well, at @LO_NY_Rangers. Once again, that's at @LO_NY_Rangers. And definitely subscribe to Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel. Thanks again, guys. I will see you next time.